Resuming debates. As I please the débat, the honourable member for St. John's South Mount Pearl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This latest Conservative budget is not a good one for Newfoundland and Labrador. From yet more cuts to the Federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans, at this point, Mr. Speaker, they're amputating bone. There is no more meat within DFO to cut. I'll come back to that in a moment. To charging tax on hospital parking. Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are already vicious with the fact they're being charged to park outside hospitals, charged to see their doctors, in other words, Mr. Speaker, to increasing the age of eligibility for old age security to 67 from 65. This budget is not a good one for Newfoundland and Labrador. It's not good for the fisheries. It's not good for the sick. It's not good for their families. It's not good for seniors. It's not good for First Nations, Mr. Speaker. Workfare is to be introduced in this budget whereby Aboriginal youth will be forced to work for their benefits. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, post-secondary funding for Aboriginal youth doesn't come close. It doesn't come close to meeting the need. This budget is also not good for the unemployed. The Conservatives are following through on their EI changes that punish workers by forcing them to take lower-paying jobs or jobs outside of their communities, outside of their outports. This budget, Mr. Speaker, is not good for the vast majority of students. There's nothing in the budget to tackle crippling student debt. The average federal student debt load stands at $28,000. There's a problem in this country, Mr. Speaker, with accessibility and affordability of post-secondary education from one province to the next, and there's nothing in this budget to address that. This budget is not good for the vast majority of young Canadians. There are 240,000 more young Canadians unemployed today than before the recession. And all this budget does for youth job creation is re-announce $70 million in funding over 3 years for 5,000 internships. That's a start, Mr. Speaker. But again, it skims the surface of the actual need. Closer to home, Mr. Speaker, there's nothing in the Conservative budget to offset the 4% increase to Marine Atlantic fares that's due to come into effect on April the 1st. If that doesn't amount to a tax increase for all of Newfoundland and Labrador, I don't know what does, Mr. Speaker. Newsflash for the Conservatives. Newfoundland is an island, and when you increase the ferry rates, the cost of everything, Mr. Speaker, eventually goes up. There's barely a mention of Labrador in the budget, Mr. Speaker. And the one mention was for an old jobs program. For Conservatives, Mr. Speaker, and I said this last week during question period, Labrador is just a place to pull puppet strings. If Labrador can't get a decent mention in a federal budget that's released just before a federal by-election, on the eve of a federal by-election in Labrador, well, Labrador will never get anything. Conservatives seem more preoccupied with winning the Labrador seat than actually doing something concrete for Labrador. And you know what they're saying back home, Mr. Speaker. I also mentioned this the other day, last week. You either do it the right way, Mr. Speaker, you either do it the right way or the panache way. Conservatives choose to cheat Labradorians out of fair representation. That's the panache way, and they defend it at every turn. Mr. Speaker, the Atlantic Caucus of the New Democratic Party was in Labrador West this past fall. One of the chief concerns we heard on the ground in Labrador West was the desperate need for affordable housing. The mining industry, iron ore specifically, is doing very well, but the vacancy rate is practically zero. The local college offers a mining course that practically guarantees employment, but classes aren't full because there's no place for students to live. We heard stories about how women remain in abusive relationships, Mr. Speaker, because there's nowhere else for them to go. There's nothing in the Conservative budget that tackles the national housing crisis in any real way. The Conservative government is investing $253 million in affordable housing, but that does nothing to address the lack of affordable housing in Canada through a national housing strategy. Throwing money at the provinces without, in the absence of, a national plan is irresponsible. It makes no sense. Oh, Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to say now, I should have said this from the start, but I'll be sharing my time with the member for, with another member for St. How do you pronounce that?
St. Bagot.
St. Bagot. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm still working on my French, Mr. Speaker. I stood on my feet in February to address the need for a national housing strategy, to talk about the needs for Labrador, to talk about the housing needs on the northeast Avalon in Newfoundland. And then what did every last Conservative member, including Peter Panashaway, do? They voted against a national housing strategy. There's nothing, Mr. Speaker, in this budget for the people of Labrador. Let me reiterate. If Labrador can't get anything substantive from a federal budget that's released on the eve of a federal by-election in Labrador, from what we can be seen, an election budget for Labrador, that's what this amounts to, Mr. Speaker, an election budget for Labrador. If Labrador can't get anything now, Labrador will never, ever get anything from this Conservative government. Newfoundland and Labrador MPs are supposed to represent Newfoundland and Labrador in Ottawa. They're not supposed to represent Ottawa in Newfoundland and Labrador. Again, Mr. Speaker, that's the Panache way. That's not the right way. It's not the New Democratic way. I mentioned DFO earlier in my speech, Mr. Speaker. Newfoundland and Labrador may not be the great fishing epicenter that it once was, that we once were. The Grand Banks of Newfoundland may not be what they once were, but that doesn't mean the Government of Canada should walk away from a responsibility for our fisheries that it took over when Newfoundland joined Confederation in 1949. But that's what's happening, Mr. Speaker. The latest cut has the Conservative government slashing the Federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans budget by $108 million over 6 years. $108 million over 6 years. There's talk that regional headquarters, like the one in St. John's, Newfoundland, could close. I have a direct quote, Mr. Speaker, from the budget. Quote, to complement these savings, Fisheries and Oceans Canada will also improve regional program efficiencies by reducing management overhead and consolidating decision-making authorities. Now, does that say directly that regional offices will close, Mr. Speaker? No. The wording never does, Mr. Speaker, but the writing most definitely appears on the wall. I also mentioned hospital parking earlier in my speech, Mr. Speaker. This budget requires that GST, HST be paid on all hospital parking. Currently, public sector bodies are exempt. So, the change will make parking spaces or facilities operated by a municipality or hospital taxable. Canadians, Newfoundlanders and Labradorians see the parking fees that are most definitely destined to increase as a financial barrier to health care, Mr. Speaker. The Conservative government is charging people to see their doctors. That's what this amounts to. Charging people, Mr. Speaker, for medical treatment. That's what this amounts to again. So let me sum up. Let me sum up all the people that this Conservative government is leaving behind or so arrogantly neglecting in this budget. Newfoundlanders and Labradorians first. Labrador, or the Big Land in particular. Seniors, students, young people, First Nations, Canadian youth, low-income Canadians, fishermen. Labradorians are lucky in a way, Mr. Speaker. They're lucky in a way. As I mentioned, a by-election will be called there soon. A by-election in which the people of Labrador will have an opportunity to send a message to the Conservative government that their way of governing, dictating from Ottawa without a moral compass, is unacceptable. All Canadians, Mr. Speaker, all Canadians should be so lucky to have that opportunity, to have that voting opportunity here and now, because the Conservatives would find themselves out of office, Mr. Speaker. They would find themselves out of office here and now, and we would not have to wait 2 more long years. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order.
There are 5 minutes left for questions and comments for the Honourable Member for St. John's South, Mount Pearl. Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Winnipeg North.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Not wanting to put a pass on an opportunity to highlight what I believe is a lost opportunity of the government to try to deal with an issue that they really messed up last year, and that is looking at the issue of our seniors. I've had the opportunity to provide to the House numerous petitions dealing with the government's decision last year to be able where they've indicated they're going to increase the age of retirement from 65 to 67, believing, Mr. Speaker, that the government's finances do allow for us to be able to continue the retirement at age 65. And the government has lost that opportunity in this particular budget to be able to say that, yes, we messed up last year, we made a mistake, and individuals that are looking towards retirement at age 65 have nothing to fear. And I think that it would have been well received by Canadians as a whole if, in fact, the government would have fessed up to their mistake, because it's the only party that's actually said that there is a crisis when we know full well that there is no crisis. My question to the member is, would he join me and members of the Liberal caucus in acknowledging that, in fact, we should be allowing individuals to continue to retire at age 65?
The honourable member for St. John South Mount Pearl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for the good question. In terms of the number one issues in my riding of St. John South Mount Pearl, the number one issue is seniors and how seniors on fixed incomes deal with the rising prices of rents, the rising costs of living when again they're on fixed incomes. Seniors are worried, and people who are nearing the retirement age are worried about about raising the age of the OAS, the eligibility for OAS to 67 from 65. They're worried about that. They're worried about how they're going to pay the bills. They're going to pay their rents once they retire. That is a real concern, and I think New Democrats also we share the same thought that OAS should not be raised to 67 from 65. We see that that is actually included in this budget, and it's not something that seniors want to see. It's not something that we want to see. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Kitchener Centre.
Monsieur le Président, I appreciate my colleagues' comments from across the way, although I found them to be quite mystifying in another number of respects, and it seems like he's almost in an alternate universe, particularly when he talks about ferry operators suffering under this bill. I wonder if he has read that the Canadian Ferry Operators Association has said that it welcomes the 2013 federal budget. The government continues to demonstrate its commitment to transportation infrastructure. But more than that, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business has said overall this is a good budget for small business. Minister Flaherty has done a solid job by remaining on course to eliminate the deficit while announcing some important measures for Canada's entrepreneurs. The member says that no one's going to benefit in his riding from this budget. Are there no entrepreneurs in his riding?
Member for St. John South Mount Pearl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for the question. His first part of his question was whether or not I live in an alternate universe. I have to say, Mr. Speaker, my feet are firmly planted in Newfoundland and Labrador. Even when I'm here, I'm still there. So when he talks about, he mentioned a couple of groups that support a ferry increase, and I have to say, the honourable member, I don't know what universe you're in, sir, but you're not in this universe. The price of the Marine Atlantic Ferry is going to increase on April the 1st by 4%. By 4%. So all goods and services, all people, when they come across in that ferry service, they will have to pay more. When you pay more for goods and services for transportation, that cost is eventually passed on to the consumer. So everybody will pay more. Everybody will have a tax increase. That's something that was not addressed in the Conservative budget. The fact that the prices are going to increase. We live on an island.
I'll take this opportunity to maybe remind both members. Over the past few weeks, I've heard a lot of the use of the second person. And sometimes members try to do it by saying, through you, Mr. Speaker, but then they go back to the second person, and that is not in order. We must keep our remarks through the chair. And also, the member for Kitchener Centre, while he was quoting, did use the proper name of our finance minister, and that, even though it is a quote, we don't do that either. We don't do indirectly what we can't do directly. So if members could keep that in mind as we go forward, the chair and other chair occupants would greatly appreciate that. Now we will resume debate. Please du débat. Non-habile député de Saint-Hyacinthe.